This lesson is on plant structures. We're going to look at three key points. First one, what are the functions of roots, stems, and leaves? Then we're going to talk about how do seeds become new plants? And finally, what are the structures of a flower? We're going to skip over the My Planet Diary for now and come down to the bottom. What are the functions of roots, stems, and leaves? Each part of a plant plays an important role in its structure and function. Roots, stems, and leaves are just three structures we will look into further. Roots. Have you ever tried to pull a dandelion out of the soil? It's not easy, is it? That is because most roots are good anchors. Roots have three main functions. Roots anchor a plant in the ground, absorb water and minerals from the soil, and sometimes store food. The more root area a plant has, the more water and minerals it can absorb. There are two types of roots. You can see them both in Figure 1 here. A fibrous root system consists of many similarly sized roots that form a dense, tangled mass. Look at the pictures and think about which one you think that is describing. Plants with fibrous roots take a lot of soil with them when you pull them out of the ground. Lawn grass, corn, and onions have fibrous root systems. In contrast, the opposite of that, a taproot system has one long, thick main root. Which one do you think that is below? Many smaller roots branch off the main root. A plant with a taproot system is hard to pull out of the ground. Carrots, dandelions, and cacti have taproots. As the directions explained over here in Figure 1, it says there are two main root systems with many structures. Label the taproot T and the fibrous roots F. So in these circles here, if you could place a T or an F in your book to identify the taproot and the fibrous root. Now that we've talked about the two types of roots, let's look a little bit more closely at the structure of a root. In this diagram over here, you can see some of the main parts. The tip of the root is rounded and it's covered by the root cap, which is down here. The root cap protects the root from injury as the root grows through the soil. That would be this section down here. Behind that, or just above that, are cells that divide to form new root cells. Root hairs, as you see along here and over here, grow out of the root's surface. These tiny hairs can enter the spaces between soil particles, where they absorb water and minerals. The root hairs also help to anchor the plant in the soil, meaning it holds the plant down, keeps it from blowing away. Locate the vascular tissue in the center of the root. Remember, vascular tissue is tissue that water, nutrients, and food can travel up and down. That would be this tissue here. The water and nutrients that are absorbed from the soil quickly move into the xylem, which are the yellow cells here. From there, these substances are transported upward to the plant's stems and leaves. So water and nutrients are being collected down here, traveling up the middle of the roots through the xylem cells and being delivered to the stem and leaves of the plant. Phloem transports food manufactured in the leaves to the root. So the phloem cells are the red ones on the outside here, and food that is made by the leaves up in the plant up here travels down the phloem cells into the roots, where some of the food is stored. So we talked about the root of a plant. Now we're going to move on and talk about the stem. The stem of a plant has two main functions. The stem carries substances between the plant's roots and leaves. The stem also provides support for the plant and holds up the leaves so they are exposed to the sun. In addition, some stems, such as those of asparagus, store food. So they support the plant, they hold up the leaves, they carry substances between the roots underground and the leaves above ground. And in some cases, like asparagus, they can also be a storage place for food. The structure of a stem. Stems can either be woody or herbaceous. Woody stems are hard and rigid, like we would call a stick, such as in a maple tree or a branch. Herbaceous stems contain no wood and are often soft. Plants with herbaceous stems include daisies, ivy, and asparagus. So herbaceous stems are usually green stems that don't have that wood texture that we think of with a stick. Herbaceous and woody stems consist of phloem and xylem tissue, just like we talked about with the root, as well as other supporting cells. As you can see in figure 3 below, a woody stem contains many layers of tissue. The outermost layer is bark. Bark includes an outer protective layer and an inner layer of living phloem, which transports food to the stem. Next is a layer of cells called cambium, which divides to produce new phloem and xylem. It is xylem that makes up most of what you call wood. Sapwood is active xylem that transports water and minerals to the stem. The older, darker heartwood is inactive but provides support. So down in the diagram here, you can see the middle of the stem is called heartwood. This is basically inactive cells, just providing strength and supporting the tree. Right outside of that, you have the xylem layer. It is vascular tissue that transports water, also known as sapwood in trees. So in your book, you want to make sure you have xylem labeled here. The red layer is the phloem cells, the tissue that transports food. So remember, that's taking food from the leaves and bringing it down the stems into the roots, or in some cases storing some of it in the stems. The outside layer is called cork, and it just protects the cells inside. We have a layer called cambium that's in between the xylem cells and the phloem cells. The cambium layer right here is a layer that produces new cells for both the xylem and the phloem. So if you've ever looked at a tree stump, I'm sure you've seen these rings that are formed on the inside of the tree trunk. Kind of looks like a target. These are called annual rings. They represent a tree's yearly growth. They're made from the xylem cells. Those are the cells that water and nutrients are absorbed up through the tree trunk, through the xylem cells, water and nutrients up through from the roots, and they form in the spring. And they are large and they have thin cell walls because they grow rapidly. They produce a wide, light brown ring. So a lighter brown colored ring like that would be a layer that was formed in the springtime. The xylem cells that form in the summer grow slowly and therefore are small and have thick walls. So these thinner layers that you see that are real dark lines, those are formed in the summertime. One pair of light and dark rings represents 1 year's growth. Okay, so the layer here would be the spring, the thin layer here would be the summer, so that to here would be 1 year of growth. You can estimate a tree's age by counting its annual rings. The width of a tree's annual rings can provide important clues about past weather conditions such as rainfall. In rainy years, more xylem is produced, so the tree's annual rings are wide. In dry years, rings are narrow. By examining annual rings from some trees in the southwestern United States, scientists were able to infer that severe droughts occurred in the years 840, 1067, 1379, and 1632. So look at the diagram here of the annual rings of this tree trunk, and you can tell which years there was more water. That would be the lines that are thicker, and the lines that are thinner, there would have been less water. Go ahead and complete the apply it section down here in your book. So by now you may have already planted some seeds in science class. Many plants begin their life cycle as a seed. Not all of them. There are some that spread through spores, which we'll talk about later on. But if it does come from a seed has a partially developed plant inside of it. And we're going to take a look at that in class. Again, if you have not done so already, you'll be able to see the little plant inside the seed. And then if that seed lands somewhere where the conditions are just right, then the plant will sprout out of that seed and begin to grow. A seed has three main parts. It has an embryo, it has stored food, and a seed coat. So you can see those down here in this diagram. The embryo, which you should label right here, is the green parts, and it consists of the stem and the root, which is this green area here. That will become the stem and the root of the plant. And then the cotyledons are the beginning leaves of the plant, which are right here. And you can write that in this blank, cotyledons. And that word, if you need to know how to spell it, is right here, cotyledons. And then there is stored food. That's like the filling of the seed. And it is represented by the yellow here. And that's what the embryo lives on while it's inside the seed. Outside of the seed, this brown layer is called the seed coat. The seed coat, which you can label here, protects the seed. And it protects it until it is in favorable conditions that it will start to grow. Because of the seed coat and how it protects it, seeds can be inactive for a long time, which is why the seeds, when they're in the packet at Home Depot or Lowe's or Walmart, wherever you buy the seeds from, they don't start growing. They're able to be inactive inside that seed coat until conditions are just right. In many plants, the seeds are surrounded by a structure called a fruit. So we'll find the seeds inside of fruits such as oranges, apples, even bananas. Once seeds form on a plant, they need to be dispersed so that they can grow. Dispersed means to be scattered somewhere. Seeds can be dispersed in many different ways. Sometimes an animal will eat the fruit. The seeds inside the fruit will pass through the animal's digestive system. Wherever the seeds land, you might get a new plant growing there. Other seeds are enclosed in barb-like structures, little burrs that sometimes get caught on your clothes if you're running through tall grass or through the woods, or it gets hooked onto animals, and wherever those fall and drop, if the conditions are right, could form a new plant. The water can also spread seeds around, rainwater washing it away, or if it gets into a river or an ocean, those seeds could be passed somewhere else. Wind can spread the seeds around. Dandelions, when they turn white and you blow on them and it sprays all that fuzz everywhere through the air, those are little seeds inside that white fuzz. And so that's another way that nature spreads the seeds around. Some plants eject their seeds and actually spreading them out in many directions. And seeds that are spread further away from the parent plant have a better chance of survival than a seed that falls right near the existing plant, because a seed, if it falls right near the existing plant, the parent plant, it has to fight for light, water, and nutrients from the parent. So the further away that the seed lands, the better off that it usually is. Germination is when the seed starts to grow. In order for the seed to start to grow, it absorbs water. So again, that's why the seeds in the packets don't start growing. But once we plant them in some soil and you water them, the seeds absorb the water and the embryo inside the seed starts to grow. As the embryo starts to grow, the roots come out of the seed first and grow downward. So some of you thought your plant was growing upside down. That was just the root that was coming out of the seed and growing downward. After that, the stem and the leaves start to grow upward. Use part of the bold statement on page 106 to answer the I get it. Now I know that a seed becomes a new plant when If you go back to page 106 at the top here, when does the seed become a new plant? When it, and I'll let you fill in the sentence.